All right. No conversation, no side conversations anymore. Okay, welcome to this night session. It's all about PHP. It's about the new PHP Foundation. What impact does it have? The PHP Foundation has been founded 1 year ago, as I just learned. Sorry, I'm the guy for the stupid questions here. And we'd like to discuss what is the PHP Foundation doing? What's the purpose of the PHP Foundation? Who's working on that? And of course, how you guys can benefit from the fact that there is a foundation. Because the impressive thing from my perspective as an observer over the years is really many open source projects have been, let's say, owned by a company or maybe by a foundation, but PHP just worked over 2 decades. And now finally there's kind of an official body managing the destiny of PHP. So the idea is really on the one hand to inform all of you about the PHP Foundation and of course to give all of you the opportunity to ask your questions about the foundation and to clarify whatever you'd like to know. We'd like to welcome everybody here in the room. Secondly, of course, on our conference platform, devmio/entwickler.de. And last but not least, also the free stream on YouTube. And it's my job to observe the chats. And in case you'd like to raise a question and ask a question, it's my job to read the question here. And in case you guys here from the room would like to ask a question, then please make sure that you talk to Annie's microphone, yeah? She will hand over the microphone to you so that everybody also in the streams can also hear your question. Having said that, I'd like to introduce the people right here on the panel. I'm starting with Roman. Roman Pronskiy, he's a PHP developer and he is a product marketing manager for PHP Storm at JetBrains. He's a founding member of the PHP Foundation and he cares for the operational activities of the foundation. So he's the real manager, as far as I could learn, of things that happen at the PHP Foundation. Please welcome Roman.
Thank you.
Secondly, I'd like to introduce Sebastian Bergmann. I think, have you ever missed one PHP conference or International Reach conference? I think you've been there at...
I have not missed an instance of this conference, except the one last year in Munich.
Yeah, you're right, except for that one. So since 2001, you are speaker and friend and advisor at this conference. Probably it's not necessary to introduce him. He's the creator of PHP Unit. He's co-founder and working at the PHP CC. And, well, a well-known expert all over the world in the PHP community. Please welcome Sebastian. Last but not least, Robert Lemke. He is the founder of the NEOS open source project, creator of the Flow framework, experienced with managing foundations, as I heard, yeah, and it's his role to ask the intelligent questions while I only read the questions which are coming here. So please welcome Robert Lemke. Having said that, I would like to hand over the virtual microphone to you, Robert, asking questions. And again, we got 3 audience on YouTube, on our platform, here in the room. And of course, we'd really like to get your questions and bring all your comments, etc., also to the conversations. Let's keep this as an open conversation. Robert.
Okay, thank you, Sebastian. So before we get started, if you're hearing some voices in your head, it's not because of your beer, but something's coming out of that speaker which doesn't belong to this session here. Maybe you have a look at that. Yeah, but apart from that, let's talk about the PHP Foundation and learn about why it happened and what its purpose is and what they have in mind for that. So yeah, I'm very curious about that. Sebastian, with your background of PHP, I mean, how did you actually get into the PHP project or get in touch with PHP? Because I know that previously you did something on a completely different platform.
Well, when I was a little boy, I learned programming and assembly on the Amiga. At some point, I left high school and moved on to university. And in the time before university, I got a message from a friend that I knew from the Amiga demo scene, real-time 2D, 3D graphics, and he was our graphics artist. And he said, now I'm doing internet. You heard about the internet, websites. I'm still not a programmer. So far, that was not a problem, but now I need something dynamic on the web server, and can you help me? And he told me, basically, you can do it with Perl or with PHP. I did not know either language. I tried Perl for a day, gave up on that, and have been happily using PHP ever since 1998. But it was a very... But it was a very slippery slope from there. If you want to put a negative spin on that, if you want to put a positive spin on that, it's really easy to get involved in an open source project if you go to a mailing list, start asking questions like I did. Sooner or later, you are answering other people's questions. And next thing I know, I was working on the documentation and fixing bugs here and there. And then I started to work on this PHP unit thing.
Yeah. So you consider yourself a PHP user, I guess, right?
Yes.
Yeah. That's good. And did you own an Amiga, or what was your path to PHP?
I didn't. I think my first computer was X386, so it was later than Amiga. And I started doing PHP when I was a student. I studied math, and my teacher asked me if I can do a website for a math conference. And I Googled what do people use for websites. It was PHP, and it worked pretty well. And then I found a real job after I graduated from university, and I did PHP all the time since then. So, and I started writing a newsletter about PHP about, I don't know, 10 years ago or so. And so I learned the community, and I read all the internals, mailing lists, everything. So I knew the people. I never met them, but I knew all of them. And later I switched the job to marketing when I joined JetBrains. And
still PHP.
Yeah, PHP. Yeah. I'm doing marketing for PHP Storm and product marketing. So I really need to communicate and really know well the community and what developers need for PHP.
Right. Okay. But Sebastian, how is actually PHP being developed? I mean, the programming language itself. Like, how was that in the old Amiga days back then, and how did that change over time?
Well, in the early days.
Not so early. I mean,
not so early then. Okay, so for a long period of time, it was like people that have an itch that they needed to scratch, like in many other open source projects. Mm-hmm. They tried to file a ticket, tried to communicate on the mailing list, hey, I have this problem, can somebody please fix that? And either that gets fixed or it doesn't get fixed, and sometimes when it doesn't get fixed, that person turns into a contributor. Mm-hmm. And then there were certain eras, if you want to use a term like that, in the history of PHP, like there was the Yahoo era. There was a period of time in the late 90s, early 2000s when a couple of people were employed full-time by Yahoo to work on PHP mostly, people like Rasmus and Andre and Sarah. And then there was the Facebook era, where people were employed by Facebook to work on PHP and so on. But it's, as a whole, if you look at how many people contribute to PHP, only very, very few were ever paid to work on the software. Mm-hmm. And as it was said in the introduction, for a very long period of time, that just worked. And it still works, but we want to ensure that it keeps on working going into the future.
Yeah. Do developers have specific areas they are specialized in on working on the PHP core?
I would say that most developers are specialized in one specific area. Like there are people that work on one specific extension, like the MySQL extension or the XML extensions or the JSON extension, what have you. There are very few people that work overall on the language itself, on the compiler, the runtime, opcache, bytecode caching, optimization, and so on. More like the infrastructure to make the rest work. And that can be scary, that it's only so very few people that know about certain things. And that's one of the goals that we want to achieve, to distribute knowledge that's currently only in one or two persons' heads and put that into multiple people for redundancy.
I see. But how is the popularity of PHP? I mean, what's your impression? How did that evolve over time? Are people losing interest in PHP as a programming language so that there's not new companies stepping up, founding developers? What's about the popularity of PHP in a whole?
I mean, PHP is a mature language, and it appeared the same year as Java and JavaScript and Ruby, as far as I remember. So it definitely is not a new and fancy thing. But from what I can tell, there are a lot of people using it, and we still see it's growing. So I see it from PHP Storm users, these numbers that we have, it's not going anywhere.
Yeah. Do you have any numbers about how much PHP is used? Or?
Depending on who you ask, it's either 70 plus or 80 plus or 85 plus % of the web that's powered by PHP in some way or another. True, most of that is probably a WordPress that is used by someone who doesn't really do PHP development that much. Yeah. They do use a ready-made solution, and there's nothing wrong with that. Just happens to be implemented in PHP. That's where we get so large numbers from. But you don't really know. There's no real.
There's that report from RedMonk, the yearly report.
But if I look at reports like that, like taking data from web servers plus taking data from the job market and taking data. Out of patterns of how birds fly in the sky, and that's all the same. That's in my opinion, grabbing numbers from thin air and presenting them in the fancy report.
Okay.
And download numbers don't really count because there's not that single place where you can download, and even that would not give you how much installation, users, developers, whatever.
Okay, but we know PHP is really popular still, but it's probably boring to reiterate on that because it's still there and nothing dramatic is happening until now. So what dramatic thing happened that you now think like we need a foundation? I mean, PHP went fine without a foundation for so many years.
There were actually a few attempts to create foundations before. They didn't happen for different reasons. One of them was an attempt by Sebastian and Stefan.
By people here in Germany,
and I think the one thing that triggered our attempt was the blog post by Joe Watkins, who is one of the very well-known PHP contributors for ages. So he wrote a blog post about a buzz factor. So a buzz factor is a measurement of...
It's kind of cynical, if you want. How many people in a project, and this is by no means limited to an open source project such as PHP, it goes for any project, does not even be limited to software. If you have a team working on something, how many team members need to be run over by a bus to critically harm the project? And that's where this term comes from. And Joe wrote the blog post early last year about the buzz factor for PHP. And he stated that the bus factor for some of the critical parts of PHP, like the compiler, runtime, opcache, and so on, is 2, if we are lucky. Some of that knowledge is only in one of those 2 persons' brain. Other parts are only in that other person's brain, and like 50% is in both persons' brains. So that's not really a good situation to be. There was, at that time when he wrote the post, there was no immediate threat, if you want, but it triggered that we started to talk about, hey, we need to do something that later turned into the foundation. But at that point in time, we thought that we would have more time to actually do this. And then something happened, and then something that happened is that Nikita Popov decided that he wanted to work less on PHP and more on LLVM and CLang and Rust.
I mean, he's still so young. So
he's still so young, and it's perfectly fine for him to say he does want to do something else.
Yeah.
And suddenly, we needed to accelerate founding the foundation.
Yeah. But probably, I mean, he didn't leave the project
No.
in a sudden...
no, he's also part of an advisor. My mic is gone?
Yes, it's gone. Oh, did you enable screen time or something for your microphone? Maybe your time is over. do you have a hand mic?
Am I back? Yeah,
I'm back. Yeah.
So where was I? So he's still with the project. So he's still working on things. He's still maintaining PHP parser.
Yeah. Screen time. I guess it's screen time. How much did you talk yesterday?
Hello?
Okay.
And he serves as an advisory board member for the foundation and helps us and is available.
Can you give us the hand mic?
There's another microphone?
Yeah. Thank you.
There's a second one right for the room, Aniona.
Hello?
Yeah.
Okay. So he's still there. He's not gone, and he did not leave overnight. So that was good, and it's still good. We just needed to accelerate our foundation, and we were lucky to find like a foundation as a service platform, and that's where Roman can take over.
Yeah. So since we had a tight deadline, we need to set up everything fast. So we made some research on how we could do that, and we found the Open Collective, which is essentially a foundation as a service platform, which handles everything for us, like legal things, payment processing, and stuff like that. And we only need to do the development thing and the people thing, so not operational stuff. It helped a lot. It allowed us to start quickly to accept donations, and maybe at some point we would need to start a real entity that is for future scope.
Yeah, but I think it was a good head start, because I know that sometimes it could take a year to only get all the administration set up.
Yes, exactly, exactly. So they handle everything. Like we do contracts with Open Collective with developers, and that saved us a lot of time. They have a fee for that, but if we were doing that ourselves, that would be even more.
Yeah. So how did you communicate now? Like, hey, PHP community, we have a foundation and we want your money. Or did you tell anything more about like what you would
do with
that?
Yeah, we started conversation with Joe, Stefan, Sebastian early last year, and then later I reached out to big companies that have vested interest in PHP. Live, basically, it's Laravel, Symfony, and Drupal, WordPress, and they were all of them were very, I would say, enthusiastic about the foundation, and they happily joined as a founding companies. And there were like overall 10 companies you can find the list. Zend and Composer packages, yeah. Tideways, I might forget some, but it's 10 companies, including JetBrains, that founded, and yeah.
Including JetBrains. Yeah.
Yeah, and later, so we had a certain amount of money promised by these founding companies, and this is what we took as a projected like budget. Then the rest came from many companies out there, and we really appreciate it, and want to thank everyone who is donating to PHP Foundation.
Do you know how much?
Just a question from the room. Maybe
Yeah.
you hand over the microphone. Good. Or are we too late now? We needed to wait until the microphone stuff was done.
Yes, it should still kind of touch on. You mentioned earlier that obviously PHP's been around for a long time, and this kind of growing code base, and it just kind of worked, and there's a limited number of people want to maintain it. And obviously one of the founding factors was that more interesting things like Rust and might be a reason why they're not going to touch. And if I remember rightly, there was a proposal, I think, to allow Rust development for PHP as well. What options do you see for the foundation going forward to make development of PHP in a code base that's maybe at first a little bit scary, like most legacy code is, and especially then legacy C code? What options do you see for the foundation to be able to kind of motivate people to say, okay, I want to get in there and understand these things? And
thanks for the question. That's the focus of the developers that we have employed or contracted, depending on how you want to look at that. So far, is the focus of these people is to do maintenance, like make APIs that probably made sense to the person who implemented them, defined them 20 years ago, but nobody from that time, or very few people from that time are still around. So going through cleaning up lots of old stuff, paying back technical debt that has accumulated for over 2 decades, documenting the things that they find and touch along the way, so that the next person who comes along finds the place not only in a better state, but also in a documented state, which makes it better again. So it's not just new feature development that the focus is, but cleaning up stuff, fixing bugs, and making it easier eventually and hopefully for new contributors to contribute to the project. In the first round of developers that are now working for the foundation, we limited ourselves to people who have been contributing to PHP for years and who already know their way around the code base and who are in a capacity to make these technical debt changes and prepare the code base for people that are completely new to that. So that would be probably something for the future, that we try to get C developers to work on that. And maybe even, coming back to part of your initial question, maybe even come at some point into a situation where you can write an extension for PHP in Rust if you want to do that, or rewrite a certain part of PHP in Rust if you want to do that.
Yeah. Okay. You talked about the objectives and the initial objectives. So you also talked about that you employ developers. So what is actually the objective of the PHP Foundation at this point? So what do you try to achieve with the money you get from the funding?
So yeah, for the first year, we stated our goal, as Sebastian said, hire developers to maintain PHP core. That's what we wanted to do, and we did that. So we hired 6 developers, all part-time developers, and they, if we take a look at statistics, they made maybe half of the commits to PHP since April, when they started this year. So I think that's pretty impressive result.
I've seen a lot of features and parts of PHP 8.2 are already funded by by the PHP Foundation, right?
Yeah, correct. And for the next period, our goal is to scale this. Basically, developers will have more load. They will be almost full-time, some of them. There will be new developers joining the team, and we see what we can do more. Yeah. Maybe it will be a bigger scope, new things. Maybe we'll do some experiments.
Yeah,
so
nice.
Could you please repeat the number of developers? Maybe I missed it.
6.
6. Cool.
Yep.
Yeah. Sebastian, you said you are focusing on maintenance, but also it's important to brain pick the knowledge of people and to document that. So I've read that there's a book actually which is being augmented. Can you tell us something about that?
So that as part of the PHP documentation project, there is a book, if you will. It's not
It's
printed.
the PHP internals book.
It's the PHP internals book.
Yeah.
It has not really been updated for a couple of years, so it was not up to date with PHP 7 and PHP 8 and so on. But one of the things that our developers are working earlier, when they clean something up, they document the new clean state in that book, so that that book over time hopefully gets up to date. And once it is, it stays up to date, because we need that knowledge somewhere where it's easily accessible. And it's a two-prong approach to achieve that, making it less that you have to understand, making it easier to understand what you have to understand, and provide documentation, like the single place where you look, well, apart from the code, obviously, but have a central place where things are documented and you can learn that stuff.
Yeah, okay, so that means you try to prepare also for new contributors to the project. So today, what would a new contributor need in terms of skills to start helping out?
Be proficient enough with the C programming language and the usual C development toolchain in a Unix-like environment. And then the ability to tolerate some level of pain digging through some really old C code.
But isn't that part of the deal to program C? I mean, okay. Sorry about that. So when I think about someone developing the programming language with a C background, that's often probably a person not spending so much time using PHP, like it is so often with products. It's very hard to keep touch in using the product and getting the product experience. So when you think about imagine the PHP Foundation is going bigger and has more funds. How would the PHP Foundation direct their developers what to spend money on? I mean, you have some weight then in the community to focus on certain features you like. So how is the decision process?
Okay. Yeah, so first of all, from the very beginning, we stated that language decisions are left to the RFC process and PHP internals community. So we do not aim to change that anyhow. Regarding a way of maybe directing the development that is done by the PHP Foundation funds, we are actually, this is a thing we are working on right now, and we are trying to come up with a good process for that, because developers, all the developers that we hire, they have a proven record of contributions to PHP core, so they know what they are doing. They have a good reputation, and we trust them. But we also have huge user bases that are somehow maybe underrepresented in the PHP internals. I mean, the user bases of PHP, like frameworks and CMSs. So, and they are sponsors of PHP Foundation. So we would like them to give us some feedback and share their pain points with us so that we could take that into account and address that with the PHP developers forces that we have.
Yeah. Did you receive any feedback from people from the PHP internals or the PHP core group who are not actively involved yet in the PHP Foundation? Do you know what they think about founding the foundation?
So we do have a Discord server that we use for communication, and this server, we invited a few folks.
Apart from gaming, of course.
Yeah. We do some streaming and stuff, play World of Warcraft together. We invited a few core developers that actively contribute to PHP Core to this server so that they have a common place to communicate and provide their feedback. So that is how it works right now. We plan to scale it. Maybe Discord is not the best. This is what we discussed today with Sebastian, but we'll see how we manage that.
I'll leave that moderator role for a second. Tell you about a role we've chosen for the NEOS Foundation. Because we had, I mean, like often, you have an open source project with people and developing things, and they should take the decisions on what is being made, because they are actually offering their voluntary time and so on. Yeah. But on the other hand, you sometimes need a foundation to have legal services and all the stuff, trademark and so on. So what we did there is that the foundation is just providing these services to the core team, but the core team has all the voting power on the foundation. So if you're an active member of the core team, you can automatically become a member of the foundation, but no one else is allowed to become a member. So there are no company memberships, and even the board must be active in the team. So so that means our foundation is doing pretty boring stuff and is not deciding on what the budget is spent for example. That is, the team is actually voting on what the budget is spent for. But the foundation is just providing all the financial services and so on. And I mean, we don't have so much experience with that yet. It's running for 2 years or so, and we don't have the budgets you have here, like $46,000 I've read. But like it feels right. It somehow feels good, and also I have the impression that it could represent really the community, and it's not a separate thing. Could you imagine something like that for the PHP Foundation? I mean, would that fit into the ecosystem?
I don't think
of course it's not up to you or someone to decide that, but could that be a role?
I don't know if the PHP core team is somehow defined right now. Mm-hmm. I mean, there are people who contribute to PHP core.
Yeah.
But there are also PHP internals, which is a bigger group.
Yeah.
So maybe, yeah.
We don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been only doing this for about a year now. We're still figuring things out. And I think in the future we will have more and more discussions. On the one side with other developers that are not paid by us who work on PHP, and get a better understanding of how we can improve collaboration with them and so on. But on the other, also in the other direction, like at the moment we are trying to figure out what a good, maybe not the best at the first attempt, but what a good first step would be to channel feedback from the community, from people that use PHP every day as a developer, and give that to us so that we can cluster that, prioritize that, to find out what our developers should work on next.
Yeah.
And it's agile, it's iterative. We're using a foundation as a platform service thingy,
Yeah.
right? So that's for bootstrapping. And if at some point we probably grow out of that, and we probably also grow out of the way we do things right now, because we learn along the way. So far, it's working quite good, I would say. You mentioned some numbers and threw some numbers around.
It's on the website.
Yeah, and that's the point I wanted to make. That's in my opinion, the best thing about this platform, that everything is transparent. You go to Open Collective and everyone, even if you're not supporting the foundation, everyone can see as public information who put money into the foundation and who took money out of the foundation and for what purpose. So that is public record. It's very transparent. That's awesome. But if I look at these numbers, and I look at them a couple of times a week, it's scary and nice at the same time. Nice to see that a lot of individuals, a lot of companies are giving us money. That's nice that they care about PHP enough and that trust us, that we who started this thing about a year ago. But it's also scary because suddenly I'm responsible for, or share the responsibility with people like Roman and others to do something useful with this money. And we hopefully already earned a level of trust by now that we do useful stuff with that. And again, the way that the public record is there on the website probably helps with that we are not taking the money and run away with that. But it's a responsibility, yes.
Yeah, but you
Here's
also...
a question.
A question.
Here's a question from YouTube. Let me please read it from Ben Ramsey. Hello.
Oh.
Hi, Ben.
Hi, Ben.
Hey. Have there been any discussions with any of the folks from the mysterious The PHP Group about how the foundation can help fulfill the role the PHP Group used to fill? Question mark.
I should probably not answer that.
There were no discussions, so...
That was a better answer than I would have given.
No.
Okay. Then I'd like just to add a very practical question. Yeah? Here in the room and also on the stream, etc., lots of people are working with PHP, building products with PHP, or doing service using PHP. If they themselves or their organizations like to help, to contribute, to become a member, what could they do? How can they do that? And how could they maybe benefit?
So donating is really easy.
But you need to find the right website first, and it is not the, what did I find? Let me look it up. The Phoenix House Painting Foundation. That is
really?
phpfoundationinc.org. That's not the right one.
The right site is the php.foundation.
Right.
And from there you can go to our Open Collective page and donate money via Open Collective. This is really easy, and as Sebastian said, everything is fully transparent. You can see every transaction that goes in or out. As for becoming a member or somehow benefiting from that, we don't provide like clear benefits for this right now. We do plan to do so in the next year. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that makes the whole process much more transparent than it's ever been, because always there have been people being paid for developing PHP.
And it was kind of semi-public information. Like if you knew the right people, you knew who is currently being paid to work on PHP. And at the end of the day, people that are full-time employed by a company to contribute to an open source project like that, they more or less get some sort of influence, which is okay if it's transparent. But with Open Collective, it's now very transparent, like who is giving money and who is getting that money. I kind of like that.
Here's another question in the room. Annie, could you please pass the mic? Right here in the first row. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing such brilliant information. I was very excited to see the PHP Foundation launch. I'm Chandeep, I'm part of the Drupal community. I've been a member of the Drupal Association since 2014. And if there's ever a point where you want to pivot into being also a membership association, I'm very happy to lend my time as a volunteer to go through those benefits. One of the benefits we have is, so we'll pay like $20 a month and $20 a year, or larger amounts. But there's levels that are already set up, and specifically one of the things you get as a member is the ability to vote in the elections once a year. So, yeah, loads of things that we could chat about. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Great. I think it's always surprising that companies, they are buying tools like PHP Storm, for example. That's a no-brainer. You just pay for that. You buy a subscription. But as long as something is for free, you don't feel like, not even investing five euros a month for the whole company. Yeah. So how does that come? Did you have some of that experience with PHP units, or do you have some experience with that?
I just wanted to say that I previously said that we don't have benefits, but I think the main benefit, if you're donating to PHP Storm, is that you ensure that PHP is supported.
Yeah, but that's so clear. Everybody must be completely,
in this thing called the real life, like outside of the intangible stuff that is software, people expect that the sidewalk just works, or that the roads work, and the way that is ensured, that the streets are maintained and so forth, and the infrastructure is because everybody contributes a share through taxes and keeps everything working. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not proposing that everyone who uses PHP has to pay a tax and contribute. This is supposed to be a nice thing, we don't want to force this on people. But if you're not already contributing, there are many ways to contribute. You could help with the documentation, you can help with fixing bugs, you can donate your time. If you cannot do that, then maybe think about for a second if you can, or if your company can contribute in a financial manner.
What makes me sad is that people, individuals are very often much faster giving money than companies. And in my experience, even smaller companies are much faster donating money to such a project than bigger companies. I calculated the numbers. So, because one thing, when you look at the donators for the PHP Foundation and calculate that per employee, right? Then Automatic gave 12 euros and JetBrains 52. Very nice. And my company 400. But that's because we're a very small company. But I think, if a big company gives 10,000 euros, that sounds like a large sum, but if that big company depends on PHP, that's basically nothing. And I'm really puzzled by that. I think we need to communicate that. And of course, we don't want to scare people. Like, if you don't do that, PHP will be gone. But somehow it must feel natural.
I have a scary talk day after tomorrow about the PHP Stacks supply chain.
Yeah.
I'd like to apologize in advance if I scare you, but then again, we are close to Halloween, so scary things are in season. But yeah, it's a big problem, and I'm fascinated that it took not only in PHP's specific case so long for a foundation to come and for money to be channeled through people who work on PHP. But if you look at the open source as a whole, it has been around for, I don't know, at least 30 years, probably longer, but in mainstream for about 30 years now. And only in the last couple of years, I've had conversations with other people who work on open source that they would like to get paid for that, or that they cannot work as much as they would like to on open source anymore because they have to do other work.
Kids.
That. Yeah?
Yeah.
So it took a really long time to have that conversation.
Yeah.
But over the last couple of years, I think it became more and more important.
Yeah, and I can tell you from experience that fear of if you pay some volunteers to maintain the core and that other volunteers are scared off by that, that never happened in anything I've seen in open source. So there's just so much to do, and yeah. So I guess people should convince their bosses to do a regular, a frequent donation, and if that doesn't work, you probably can say like, oh, we buy these stickers, it costs 500 euros a month, and I guess you will send them some, right?
So here's another teaser as an add-on to what Roman said earlier. There may be elephants in the future.
Ah. Okay, then everything is solved, I guess. So apart from the elephants, what next steps have you planned for? Do you know something already which you want to do during the next months?
Currently, we're working on, as I mentioned, on Twitter. By the way, Foundation has a Twitter, so it's the PHPF. You can get some updates from there too. As I mentioned on Twitter, we are working on renewing contracts with developers, and some of the contracts will be increased. Like they will be way more time to PHP development. This is really exciting, and we're also gonna share a transparency report soon, which basically shows everything we've done within this year, and maybe some plans for the next period. Maybe we have some questions regarding or suggestions regarding the future plans. Like, what do you think is most important that Foundation should work on? We are really, really eager to hear the feedback.
So here's a question.
There's a question. I guess it's Perl support.
Yeah, good timing, because I wanted to circle back to something you said in the beginning. So there were like 10 companies, big companies that founded this. So they will, or you want to grow the core team, bring maybe more people from these companies with their expertise, helping out with the code and taking decisions. As you said, the core team takes the decisions, what they are doing mostly. So what's the risk here that these 10 companies will have the bigger voice, so the rest will be a bit upset, let's say it gently?
So we made it from the beginning very clear, and that's also on the Foundation's website, that what we do as the Foundation and what the developers who are paid by the Foundation do is subject to the regular RFC and voting process of the PHP internals team. So if somebody, it doesn't matter if an RFC comes from a developer that is paid by us or by somebody who is not paid by us, the internals community needs to be convinced. There is a vote, and you cannot, in theory probably yes, but in practice you cannot really buy votes.
Actually, it's much better than before, because previously only a handful of companies could decide, and now people can vote with their money, with your money. So I guess we'll see a lot more donations, and not only financially, but also if you have a marketing expert or a funding expert in your company, then.
Or somebody who can do a logo or things like that.
Someone who can do a logo, yeah, maybe there are people. Then I guess contributions are
Yeah, so we
Accepted
actually
it.
trying to grow community, and there are a few people joining the foundation community, I would say. We have Sergey, release manager of PHP 8.2, who's helping us with the website. He's just volunteered to do that. We have Ayesh, who is writing monthly blog posts about what the core team is doing. So, and we post these kind of requests for help in PHP Foundation updates. So if you want to help without like non-financially, you can subscribe to our updates and get some
nice
ideas
blog,
from that.
yeah. Yeah.
So we, for example, we needed some help with swag, and we
So
got
Sticker
it.
Mule helped
Yeah,
out.
Sticker Mule helped us.
So the fact that that Roman can wear this particular T-shirt, and that I brought some stickers. I forgot to get them out. I'll get them out after we're done, and I put them over there. And if you want the PHP Foundation sticker, you can get stickers. These stickers would not have been possible without non-financial help from people. Hey, I can design a sticker. Hey, here I can print stickers and ship them somewhere. So there are many ways that somebody can contribute.
Yeah, and if you see some problem and you're willing to help, you can reach out to me or Sebastian or someone from administration and say, hey, I see this problem, I want to help with it.
Yeah, and if it's only spreading the word in the community that the PHP Foundation is a good thing, that is something really necessary for PHP, so that you can get your heads clear and are not concerned with politics, but can concentrate on making everything happen and deciding on or helping developers to contribute.
Yeah, by the way, shout out to Ben Ramsey, who helps with spreading the word.
Okay.
Here's another comment. Future budgets and goals would be an interesting way to raise money. Want the two-array method, $30,000 for the E2E process. Vetted list, though.
So raising money, that's an interesting topic, because as Robert threw some numbers around, and we got that without doing any serious fundraising. Right, so we basically just announced about a year ago, hey, here's the foundation, these are the people that are involved with it, please trust us, give us money, and we do something useful with that. And starting this year in April, we started doing that, hopefully. People see it the same way that we see that. One of the things for the immediate future, for like next year, is in addition to this transparency report that Roman mentioned, come up with, not really a vision for the future of PHP, but some things that we would like to work on that feeds back into what I mentioned earlier, that we are working on channeling feedback that we get from the community to us and prioritize that, and then go out with that information like, hey, this is what we would like to work on. This is like the time frame in which we would like to make that happen. But to make this happen, we need to reach these financial milestones. So yes, good comment. Thanks for that. It is on our radar, but there are one or two steps that are required before we are able to do that.
We are coming slowly to an end. Last question from your side? Or?
No, that's what I wanted to mention.
Thank you. Then let's say thank you.
Yes, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
So, as a closing word, I'm really impressed as an observer that on the one hand, PHP, you really worked without a body or an entity maintaining it. Technically, of course, but in that kind of structure. On the other hand, I deeply believe that it's absolutely necessary to have something like that. Imagine so many businesses, so many, let's say, developer biographies are depending on this foundation. Yeah. So why not invest in stabilizing this thing? Yeah. So that's really interesting. Thank you very much. Big applause to our panelists. And thank you very much to our moderator as well.
Yeah, thank you, Robert, for moderating this, and thank you, Sebastian, for giving us the opportunity to have this panel and talk about the foundation.
Cool.
Yes.
Thank you.